Hi, this is Dr. Eric Fields. I'm a psychologist specializing in gambling addiction. Listen, if you have a gambling addiction, then chances are really high that you engage in this type of thinking, the all or nothing, black or white thinking, the type of thinking characterized by extremes. So if you want to really try to gain back control of your life and overcome this gambling addiction once and for all, then one powerful strategy is to try to combat this all or nothing, black or white thinking. Essentially, if you start practicing and getting better at thinking in shades of gray or degrees, you will be really making some major inroads to once and for all stopping and ending this destructive pattern. It takes a lot of practice. And I know what a lot of you are probably thinking. You're probably thinking the black or white, all or nothing thinking. You mean like when I decide to gamble and I go off the rails, like that kind of extreme thinking? Like I'm either gambling or I'm not gambling. And when I'm gambling, it's completely reckless and off the rails? Duh. Well, yeah, sure. That's definitely part of it. But the black or white, all or nothing extreme thinking doesn't just happen with your actual gambling behavior. It happens in many different areas of your life. So, what I'm saying is if you start practicing how to make decisions that are not so black or white, you are actually going to be making progress with your gambling addiction. The disease model really perpetuates this black or white thinking because the disease model basically says you either have the gambling addiction disease or you do not. And if you have the gambling addiction disease, then you are always going to go off the rails when you gamble. And we know that's not true. And because that's not true, we also know that people with gambling addiction, or any addiction for that matter, do have some control. You are not completely powerless and out of control. The problem with this disease model concept is, as I stated, it perpetuates this gambling addiction because if you buy into it and you start to gamble when you've been abstinent for, like, let's say several weeks, and all of a sudden you think you blew it, and you're thinking that you have this disease and have no control, especially once you start gambling, well, then it's going to be so easy to justify going off the rails as opposed to maybe stopping after placing that first or second bet and saying, okay, I had a slip, but I can manage it. It doesn't have to be so dramatic. I don't have to go on a complete bender right now. It may be really hard to practice the black or white thinking and really trying to combat that style when you're actually addressing the gambling behavior, at least at first. But with more practice in all these different areas of your life, you will be able to apply this to your actual gambling behavior. Now, am I saying so that eventually you'll be able to learn to be able to gamble more moderately? Well, not necessarily. That could be the result. Who am I to say? I don't know you. That could be the result of this. But more importantly, it certainly will give you greater control over staying away from the gambling and remaining abstinent, or if you do have a slip, managing the slip so that it's not so severe. These are really important skills. Skills about learning how to think in shades of gray and in degrees. You might be asking yourself, why do people with gambling addiction do this black or white thinking, this all or nothing thinking? I mean, why do they make decisions like this? Like in other areas of their lives, even. Let's say somebody, a close friend, upsets them, and then all of a sudden they're quick to write them off. Or they start a new job, and one thing goes wrong, and all of a sudden they're so quick to say, forget this job. This style of thinking, I usually say, results in a case of the efforts. Something goes wrong, and all of a sudden we have this extreme reaction. Now, of course, the opposite can happen too, which is problematic as well, which is something good happens, and then automatically you generalize that and think that, okay, this is the perfect job for me, or this is a perfect person for me, if we're talking about a romantic relationship. And so we kind of have the blinders on sometimes with this type of thinking because we're not thinking in shades of gray. We're not looking at the whole picture and all the different data and information. The reason why I think so many people with a gambling addiction engage in this style of thinking is because it's easier. All or nothing black or white thinking, there's only two choices, either this or that. There's never all these other considerations in different degrees. Why? Because that takes a lot of mental energy and work. And the more mental energy and work you have to put into making decisions, the more fatiguing that can be and frustrating at times. And we know that people with gambling addiction do not cope well. So, because they don't cope well and they don't have a high level of tolerance for making really thoughtful decisions and really contemplating different choices and variables, we know that they're going to resort to this overly simplistic style of making choices. It's easier, it's less mentally fatiguing. When you develop better coping skills, what you're ultimately doing is you're more able to thoughtfully consider a whole host of different solutions, choices, the pros and cons to each one. Coping well takes work. And we know that people with gambling addiction don't cope well. So it all starts with undoing this style of problematic, overly simplistic thinking. It really all starts with you practicing, really looking at all different choices and options, no matter what the decision is in life that you're making, not just related to gambling, and really thinking through decisions and really thinking through any actions that you are considering taking. And the more that you do this, the more that you're ultimately starting to take back control of your life. Because if you're a compulsive gambler, you have given up quite a lot of control over your life, not just with the gambling. Start practicing thinking in shades of gray and in degrees and resisting this overly simplistic style of thinking, and you will be on your way to overcoming this gambling addiction. This is Dr. Eric Fields. I hope you found this helpful. If so, please let me know. I wish you all the best in overcoming this really difficult addiction.